You are officially in the loop. Welcome to In the Loop podcast. I am your host, Jordan Joe Hollabaugh, professional rodeo athlete, entrepreneur, and a full-time cowgirl. I'm married to my best friend, and we are blessed to get to do what we love every day, and that is travel around the world and rodeo. My goal on this podcast is to promote the Western industry, and specifically the sport of breakaway roping. On In the Loop, we bring you behind-the-scenes stories of what real life looks like every day, from cowgirls, cowboys, industry leaders, producers, trailblazers, and all of the like. You are now officially in the loop. Let's get to it. Okay, guys, so today we are here on In the Loop 2025. We're starting a new year off, and I've conned my husband into being the first episode this year, so he's super excited about it. But one thing that we've talked about wanting to do in 2025 is starting a gold card series. And I'm making you my number one gold card series. So welcome to my gold card series, Raymond.
Thank you, those of us that are left alive. Is that what you mean?
No, I mean, you and I have talked a million miles about all of the things that you did rodeoing and just how you guys did it and what it looked like and all the changes. And I just think that I love hearing all the stories and the perspectives, and so I want to start talking about it more. Okay. I'll tell you first, the gold card, the reason I wanted to do this gold card. So a couple years ago, for Raymond's birthday, he lost his gold card, which you have to be a PRC or WP or a member for 25 years to get your gold card. So he lost it. So I went to renew it for him and get it for him as a gift. But little did I know that you had a $300 fine from Cheyenne because you turned out and didn't pay your fine. So I had to then pay your fine to reinstate your gold card. So I don't know if you lost it or you just didn't pay your fine.
No, I had it, and I didn't pay the fine because I was crippled and forgot about it. But I wasn't going much after that anyway.
Well,
but thank you.
You're welcome. Now you've got your gold card reinstated, and so now you could enter if you wanted to.
Don't want to.
You don't want to?
No. Oh, I'd love to, but not at this point.
So that's going to be my first question. Is a lot of the times you see me make all sorts of mistakes through this journey I'm on, and you say, man, I wish at this time I feel like my mind's in the best place. I've learned so much. I wish I could go back and do some things different. So if you could go and have your mindset of where you're at now, what you know, what you've learned, what would you go back and do different as a 20-year-old Raymond Hollabaugh?
I think first of all, I put a lot of time and effort into practice and stuff like that, but put more time and effort into the moment while you're doing it, and think about things before you do it instead of letting them dawn on you after you've already done it. And it's through the years I watched people that like I looked up to through the years that won, and that won on a consistent basis. It wasn't anything that they did that much better than anybody else. They just did it real consistently. Mm-hmm. And that was their job. Every day when they got up, that was their job. But every time they backed in the box, they did the same thing. Yes, the calf varies. The arena, is different everywhere, but you've still got to score, rope them around the neck, and tie them down. And that's what they did on a daily basis. And it seemed like they paid those guys a lot more than everybody else.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked a lot about that on, I use this all the time on the podcast, and you told me that Monty Henson asked you the question about confidence. So I'm going to let you tell that story because I use it a lot and it means a lot to me. So when Monty Henson, tell us about where you were at, what you were doing, and why you were with Monty Henson.
Well, I've told this story several times, but it made such a difference to me as, a 20-year-old kid at the time because I knew nothing. But I was at Greeley, and I needed to be on a charter flight to Cody. And all the calf ropers I knew either weren't going or they were full Well, there was a guy told me to go talk to Monty Henson that he thought him and Bobby Brown had a plane. So I just knew who they were. I didn't know them. I went down there and introduced myself, asked them if they had a hole for me to go, and Monty said, yeah, we do. And I asked him, I said, what's this going to cost? He said, well, we just split the gas. You know, it's Hooters plane. So I got on there. Well, I ended up spending like 3 days with these guys. Best 3 days of my career. I learned more from 2 bronc riders than anybody. But Monty, both of those guys won a whole lot at the time. But we were flying along there, and we had to fly right over the interstate because neither one of them could read a map. So we just, whatever the Rand McNally said, we just followed it above the traffic. But he asked me what confidence was. And I said, I guess, you know, believing in yourself, trying to convince yourself you can do this. And he didn't say anything for a minute. And he said, son, I'm going to try to help your career. And I was open for anything anybody would share with me. And he said, confidence comes from knowing what you're doing. He said, knowing your horse, yourself, how you rope, you know, everything you do. And he said, so if you know all that stuff about yourself and your event, why would you not have confidence? He said, it's not always going to work every time, but he said, you still should have confidence. Well, I won't ever forget that, even when I get Alzheimer's, and that's probably not far off. But that did me more good, because when I got to thinking about it, I just knew I could go fast, but I didn't know any of the rest of the stuff. My parents, they didn't know anything about roping. What I learned from roping was from my algebra teacher in high school. And, you know, and so nobody had ever tried to help me with the mental side or how you were supposed to look at it. But that completely changed the way I did look at it, because I went to trying to break it down. Why does this happen? Or why do I need to do this to make this happen? And being a rodeo coach for the last 18 years, it wasn't just me that had this problem. It's everybody I've run across. And I know kids get cooler every year, or they think they do, but that doesn't mean they know anymore. And, you know, and so I've tried to share that with everybody that's come through our program or at our house to rope, because I think until you can break it down and be open-minded, you're not going to step up to where you want to be. We can have all the dreams we want to be or how, but you got to have the tools to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. And so it was just a huge, you know, step for me in getting better.
Well, and it's helped me tremendously too, because I don't know how many times we've had the conversation of, I feel like I'm lights out in the practice pen doing everything great, and then when I go to the rodeo, I just don't feel like it carries over, or I'm not the same roper, or why can't I do this? And we've talked about this so much, and it's become part of, instead of what it feels like is, are you confident? Do you know all these things? When you get to the rodeo, it's no different than what you're doing in the practice pen or the jackpot, whether it's a $100 jackpot or a $1,000 jackpot. You know, you're making the same run over and over. So that helped me more than anything, was breaking it down and working backwards from where you want to be to how you're going to get there.
Well, I think the worst mistake that we all make is that we think we practiced, so we ought to do good.
Well, duh.
That's not the way it goes. I've had some of the worst days in the practice pen and some of the best rodeo runs I've ever made the day after. But that's not what it's about. Practicing is to keep your skills sharp, to learn what you can and can't do, you know, and then build on that. But there's a lot of people say, well, I'm not going to the roping tomorrow because I haven't roped in 3 days. So what? You know, it's you've roped for a long time. There's going to be times in the summer that you're not going to be able to rope for a week, you know, because you're on the road or there's nowhere to practice. So you got to rely on what you did in your practice up till then. And you know, you prepared home, you try to make your skills as good as you can make them. If it's going to mess up, let it mess up at home. Didn't cost you a dime. You can run another one, but you got to be open-minded. Getting mad, it does nobody any good. We've all tried that. You've got to be able to look through that. Why did this happen? What can I do to make it better? And until you can get that frame of mind, it's going to be hard for you to achieve, or anybody, the goals that you want. And when you get to the rodeo, that's not the time to think.
Right.
If you've got to think at the rodeo, especially in your event, the breakaway, it should have happened before you think about it. So you don't have that time to think. You ought to just be able to rely on your reactions from what you did in the practice pen, and just go with it. You got to be able to trust yourself.
Yeah. So let's backtrack a little bit, because this is a really cool story to me. Why did you want to be a cowboy? Your mom was a teacher, your dad was a lawyer, you had not really any rodeo history or background. Like, why be a cowboy?
I don't know. We had a couple of horses that me and my brother, we just rode, and but I had a ag teacher, algebra teacher that did rope calves there in Stanford, Texas, where I grew up. Well, I'm sure to start this story, I was probably needing a little help with this algebra.
You were?
Yeah.
Because you are a very scholar and you love school?
Yeah, I love school.
Right.
I even hated pre-K where you got to play outside. But, anyway, this guy was helping me with my algebra after hours. And, but he roped. And so he told me one day to bring these papers by his arena, which was 2 miles from where I live. Well, I had to ride my bicycle up there. And so they were roping. Well, I got to sitting around watching him, and I just loved it from what they were doing. So I got to going back up there every day. Well, then I became a really good shoot help, because that's what they were using me for.
That's why you don't work the shoot anymore.
Yeah. But this horse I had knew nothing about roping, and he did let me get to roping some around the arena, owner and stuff, and neither one of us knew what we were doing, but I didn't care. I was getting to throw it at them and stuff, so we tried that for a while, and then I talked my dad into later on buying a horse and one calf, and I was so dumb, I didn't know that calves ate horses' tails off and all this stuff, nor did I care. But I kept them in the same stall. And I'd go up there every day on my new horse, let my calf out, put him in the chute, run him about 10 or 20 times, however much he could take, put them both back in there. Horse didn't ever lose his tail, and the calf lasted a long time. And so that's kind of the way it all started.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that, like, as we've had these conversations and just talking about it, you truly love what you do. I don't think they make guys like that anymore, or even girls. Like, you will always forever rodeo, and being a cowboy will be your first love. Talk about when you grew up, you're 13 years old, starting to rope, doing all those things. You didn't know anything. So that's one of the things that I admire most about you, is you're always saying, I just want to learn. I was asked anybody and everybody questions, and I wanted to learn. And I think that's something that I struggled with, because I came from a family like that's all I ever did was rope. And so I was a little more hesitant, and probably a lot more hesitant to ask questions or want to learn a whole lot, whereas you were just a sponge. So talk about how you think that helped and benefited your career.
Well, I think it really helped, because just like what you were saying with yours, it was almost a pride deal with you. You didn't want to ask anybody for help because y'all have roped and your mom and dad rope and all this stuff, and you're supposed to know. Well, I didn't even know you were supposed to look at it that way. And somebody else had all the information I needed, and I wanted it so bad. I didn't care if you were a world's champion or what. If you would give me the time of day, I was going to ask you these questions. Mm-hmm. And to my surprise, later on looking back at it, all of these guys that I asked these questions to, which was hundreds of them, they all tried to help, and I got so much information from them but some of them at the time, the information I didn't understand because I didn't know enough about it. Well, then after getting a roping and joining a roping club about 15 miles from my house, and we roped up there twice a week and watching other people do it, and then some of the information these guys gave me made more sense after getting to do it more and stuff, but they also had to limit what they told me because I wasn't to the point to be able to use some of it. And so it's a trial and error deal. But really, I always thought I'd wish my dad would have roped. Well, the best thing that happened in the long run was my dad didn't rope, because we didn't ever have any family fights over roping unless I had a fit in the practice pen and he was turning out. He had no problem turning them all out and going to the house. Didn't bother him a bit. And, but I was able to get in with some people that let me come stay with them, that were willing to help me, that really, really helped me through the years. And I had no pride. I just wanted to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was, looking back at it, that was one thing that did help me.
Yeah.
And
I think tremendously, as I watched your career, you made the finals 7 times. We just saw this article come out on Facebook about your horse of the year, Geesey. You also had a couple other horses of the year that didn't have papers and some things happened, so you didn't actually get the award. But talk about, the horses that you had through your career, the cattle that you guys roped, and the score lines that you ran at. I mean, you still have a record, I think, in North Platte, Nebraska, of the fastest time there. And as I go back and look at these pictures of the horses that you rode and the cattle, it's just a completely different style than what we're seeing today. Not taking away from the past versus the future, the present, the future, but it was just way different. So talk about what you had to have and the horses you rode.
Well, it is a lot different now than it was then. And like the cattle were so much bigger. I'm probably on an average of 100 pounds bigger than what they roped now. And so it took a different kind of horse. You had to have a horse that would really stop to where you could count on that horse to help you on the end of the rope. When I first got my card, I had a younger horse, might have weighed 1,000 pounds, that I'd done good on at the college rodeos and good on at the amateur rodeos. Well, I thought this was good enough. Well, I learned right quick I didn't have enough horse. And I'll tell this story, and I really hate to, but it was good watching for somebody. But I go to Houston. First time I've ever been there, it was in the Astrodome, and they've got some calves that look like they had just calved. I mean, these things are huge. And I can still remember it just like it is yesterday, but they had the calf scramble right before they did the calf rope, and they still had that big white chalk square out there. Well, I've got this big old Hereford calf, and I've got this black horse that probably weighs maybe 1,000 on a good day, and he would really stop. But I'm running this calf, and this calf's running really hard, and she peels off in front of me right in the middle of that chalk square to the right. Well, I always had heard, you see their right eye, you better give it to them because it's not going to get any better. Well, I threw everything I had in both hands, and I hooked this big sucker. And about 30 minutes later, they're still trying to untangle me out there. I think the only clothing I had left on when I got on my horse was both socks. I'm bleeding, and I won't ever forget it. And I go back, and I'm so out of breath. I just sit down against the wall back there, and I won't ever forget it. Paul Tierney, he rides over there to me, and he's smiling, and he always called me Rainbow. And he looks down there, and he said, "Rainbow, you okay?" And I couldn't even answer him. I just looked up at him, shaking my head. Well, he just bust out laughing, and I don't think it's that funny at the time. I really need a nurse. I'm losing so much blood and stuff. Well, I get back out there in the parking lot and finally get unsaddled. Well, he comes over there to my trailer, and he's still laughing. And I said, "Man, this just ain't that funny. I've lost about $100 worth of clothes. and all this stuff. And he said, let me give you one piece of advice. He said, you've got to let that horse help you at your size. And he said, sometimes one more swing and a little bit of slack makes a big difference. Well, that was one piece of information I will never forget as long as I live. And so, but I had some really good horses through the years, and I was blessed to have those horses. And a lot of times you don't even know what you've got until they're gone. But I had a horse I bought from Kent Youngblood, great friend of mine, and this horse had been a horse show horse, and horse had some quirks, and him and Kent's attitude, they just didn't jive together. But the biggest thing, the horse scored absolutely perfect, and he had a 103 speed index. They'd run him on the track. He could really, really run, but you could not ride him up in the corner. The only way to get him out of the corner was to nod your head or lead him. That drove Kent crazy. I tried to, and I got invited to that Clem McSpadden's, the world's richest roping, up there at Bushy Head. And the horse I'd been riding had been crippled. And I asked Kent, and I had never been on that horse. We were at Dallas at the rodeo. And I asked him, I said, would you ever go with me to Clem's roping and let me ride that horse? The fees were $1,000 up then. That's a long time ago. That's a lot of money. And he just told me, no, I'm not interested. And so I just let it go. Well, he come back around there in about an hour, and he said, you want to take this horse? And I said, well, you said no. And he said, I didn't want to go. You can take the horse. So I took the horse, had never run one on him. Make a long story short, I think it was 6 head and a short at that time. And I'd made the short go at Dallas that night too. And so me and D. Pickett, we had a little charter plane over there on this grass beside the arena where we were going to take back to Dallas. Well, we came in first and second in short go, but they let us run ours first. And when we both roped, we just took off that plane. Well, I was winning first when we left, even though I didn't know how it ended up. But I got back to Dallas and I told Kent, I said, I know I won at least 10,000, maybe more. I don't know how much more, but I said, I'll give that to you for that horse. No, wouldn't take it. And so after a couple of car accidents he had with the horse, running off with him and into him, a couple of months later he ended up letting me buy that horse. I didn't ever have a minute's problem with the horse. The horse was great to me. I had a chance to win I think it was in 1982, win the average, break a rope on my 10th one, a brand new rope. Cost me the average. I had lots of time to, but anyway, this horse was great. I placed on a lot of calves I probably shouldn't have because of the way the horse could run and stuff. And then I had some more horses through the years. I had a horse called Saul that was really good. He could get really quick and he stopped, but just really good. That horse got nominated for the Horse of the Year too, and had the most votes, but he didn't have any papers, so that cost me from getting that. Then I had another horse after that I bought from Kent that was really good, called Scorch. Rode him at the finals one year and had a good week on him. I had another horse. Well, I ended up with a horse called Nitro that I bought from John Rothwell. That was probably my favorite horse out of all of them. Scored absolutely perfect, could really run, really stop. Pretty iffy on the end of the rope. Sometimes he was on the end of it, sometimes he wasn't, but I just had in my head, I could win. If they could keep him in the arena, I could win on that horse. And I did. And then I guess I had Sweetness after that. I cracked Sweetness out when he was 6 years old. He came from a friend of mine in Haskell, Texas. Probably had more cattle roped on him in the wheat field than he ever had in the arena. But that horse wanted to be great from day one, even at 6. And he was probably going to win the horse of the year. He had done so good all winter and up until Reno, and I won second average on him at Reno and was up at Greeley the next day, and I guess he had cracked a bone in his leg at Reno, and I didn't know it till I got to Greeley, and he was crippled, but I had to stay off of him for about, 2 months after that, so he didn't get it that year. And then Roy Cooper ended up buying that horse later, and Clint Cooper rode him for a while, and then Blair Burke ended up with him, but he was a great horse. And then I had another horse called Pedro that I really liked too, that I rode at I can't remember what year I rode him at the finals, but he came from the same guy that Sweetness did, same situation, had a million roped on him in Wheatfield and a few in the arena, and just came around really fast. He got the most votes for the horse of the year one year, and he didn't have papers either. And which papers at that time meant absolutely nothing to me.
Right.
I was just interested in the way they work, but sometimes when it comes to those awards, the papers make a difference.
Yeah.
And so I was very blessed to have some really good horses through the years.
What do you think that qualities you looked in those horses? I mean, you see now there's people that maybe have a once in a lifetime horse like that. You had, a dozen of them. So what qualities did you look in, or what do you attribute to getting to ride that many good horses in your career?
Well, first of all, back then, I think there was more, I'm not going to say more good horses, but there was a lot of horses around, and horses didn't cost so much. I'm just sitting here thinking, I think the horse I gave the most for through all of those years, through 25 years of doing it, I think I gave $22,000 for one horse. And I thought I was crazy at the time, and so did everybody around me, and but it's this day and time between the calf roping and the breakaway. There's probably more good breakaway horses now than there is good calf horses. But to me, those horses, especially in your event, they've got to score perfect. Mm-hmm. You can't get by a horse in the breakaway and try to be too flat or under that's jumping around in the box. And you might get by them in the calf roping because you don't have to rope one just right now, And so that's the biggest difference. But there's a lot of great horses out there right now, and it's just hard to get your hands on them, and the money that everybody's getting for them, I don't really know how a person makes that work anymore, but that's what everybody's doing.
Yeah,
so
find a way. Talk about post your rodeo career, you became a college coach. You were this first year you were at Charlton, you had the men's and the women's team, first time ever, win the national finals in both teams. I think it was maybe the first time a men's and women's team had done it in the same year. You went on to coach there for 10 years, and then you went and coached WT, head coach there for 8. So 18 years of rodeo coaching. What made you want to give back to kids and do that and continue to share what you learned, and the goods, bads, ups and downs through rodeo?
Well, first of all, now I'm a rodeo fan, and while you're doing it, you don't ever really see the end of your career till it's there, and then you can look back and think, or I wish I would have done more of this, more of that. But I'm always going to love rodeo, and so I wanted to still stay involved, and I got the opportunity to help at Stephenville. Bob Doty was the head coach. He just pretty much turned the whole timed event program over to me. And every day, on a bad day, we probably had 70 kids out there roping. And there were several days there was more, but I just trying to help those kids. There's a lot of them want your information. There's a lot of them don't. But if you find one that really wants it, that wants your information, you'll do anything for them. Or that's the way that I was, because I wanted to see them, win, because there was more of them like me at the time when I started than there was that came from, some world champion dad. And so I told every one of those kids at Steve Mill when I started work there, you make the NFR, I'll be the first ones in the stands. I wanted them to make the college finals, but I knew some of them had bigger goals. And I tried to get them to use the college rodeos as stepping stones to the PRCA and where they were wanting to go. And what I meant by that was I needed them to try to make the short go at the college rodeos to where they could use that short go to where here in a year or so, if they back up there at Houston or San Antonio or Fort Worth in that short go, they've got an idea of what's fixing to happen or what's going on. And that's what I wanted them to use the college rodeos for. And I think that we had a lot of success at Stephenville. We had a lot of good kids, but I'm not kidding you, that's all we did was rope. And they would listen to you. I still roped with them every day. We had more fun out there, but I like to see people, take their skill to the next level and then have success. And so that's what I liked about the college rodeo deal. You're always going to get a few mixed in there that just want to be there, just want to wear the vest, and that's fine. You've got to have those kind to make your program work. But when you've got kids that actually want it, it can be a fun deal. You might not win that much yourself anymore, but you try to win through them. And so it still gives you kind of life in rodeo, that I tell people all the time, they've got rehabs for alcoholics or people on drugs. They need one for us rodeo people that can't get over this, because I'm one of those. I'll always love it.
Yeah. Well, that song that Cody Johnson wrote, Dear Rodeo, it still makes you tear up just a little bit.
Oh, every now and then. That's why I don't listen to it anymore.
Talk about, through college rodeo and then now, you made such an influence and impact on so many people. Not just because you're my husband, am I saying that, but I've literally seen kids that have come through your program, have been exposed with you, have roped with you, that throughout their life, you made an impact on their life. So going back to your career, if you could name, 3 or 4 or 5, we'll say top 3 people that you think made an impact on your rodeo career, who were they and why?
Well, I think first of all, there had to be Ernie Taylor. I think he was the 1973 World's Champion. He helped me so much. I actually knew Ernie's wife at the time, her family. She's the one who introduced me to him. He helped me so much because at the time, I know it doesn't show now, but the first time I went to NFR, I weighed 160 on a good day. I've done good since. But, I was little and the calves were so big. And I went to a couple of his schools and he really helped me. But then I got the opportunity to stay up there a couple of summers and rope. He was gone part of it, but he left us calves there. We roped, we took care of his stuff. But he helped me so much learning how to use my horse to offset the big calves. But he was the most positive person I've ever been around. There was no excuse, you either, if you're going to do this, you either find a way or you quit. That was his words.
Right.
Your option, but he wasn't going to listen to you whine, and I've seen him mess up in the practice pen just like everybody else, but I had never seen a fit. It was always, I can do better than this, I'm running more, and so his mentality did me a lot of good at that time. And then there was people like Roy Cooper. He's 4 or 5 years older than me, but we came up through the same era. In junior rodeos, he was usually, I'd be at the bottom of the age group, he's at the top, then he'd be out. But we became friends at a young age. I remember when I was in high school going out there to Monument, to their ranch several times, roping with him and his sister, Betty Gale, and Clay, and Roy and their dad all being out there. That's some times I won't ever forget. And then me and Roy, we've been friends our whole lives. Some of the best times I've ever had rodeoing was some of the 2 or 3 years that I actually traveled with him. He was a very positive person. People were just attracted to him, but getting to practice with him on a daily basis and stuff, I can honestly say it probably wasn't anything I ever really heard Roy say that made a difference, but it was sitting there getting to watch him run 10 or 15 a day. He could do at that time stuff that most calf ropers couldn't. And, they talked about how it's changed. If he was in there today, I think it'd still be the same scenario. You're going to hear Roy Cooper. I've seen him win on little calves the size of a goat and calves as big as a horse. But he made a huge difference to me, and I got to travel with guys through the years, looking back on how lucky I was. I went with John Rothwell for several years. John didn't talk much, but John wanted to win, and just watching people go through their daily basis, of what they did, and trying to imitate what they did and stuff. And Mike McLaughlin, we went together for quite a few years. Mike's dad was a several times world's champion. We stayed there at his house a little bit during the summer. The man was older at that time, was still really smart about what it took to win in rodeo. But I got to go, through the years with some guys that won, that wanted to win. They didn't care what you did. But, if you want to win, you're going to try to do what those people are going to do. Sometimes your best friend isn't the person you need to go with, but looking back, I was so fortunate in so many ways, from the horses to the people I got to go with, from the help I had. I still wish I could go back and do it again, because I think I could do a better job. But, hindsight's always 20/20. That's what I try to get you to do, is look ahead before it's too late. Because I think if I would have done that, I could have changed several situations. I did end up second in the world one year as reserve, but looking back now, with a few changes, I think I could have got the gold buckle I wanted. The year I ended up second, it was behind Roy. It was at Oklahoma City. He had me by enough going in there, and our go-arounds paid $4,000. I couldn't catch him, but looking back, I traveled with him most of the year. I had several times during the year I could have poisoned him, and maybe achieved my goal. And, and so it just took a little antifreeze. And that's what I try to tell kids, not only you, is try to look outside the box in front of you where you're going, instead of letting it happen and then looking back and thinking, oh man, because we all do that.
Well, something you told me, I think this was about a year ago, that it made a huge impact on me. I think about it all the time, is, and I'll say it's one of the most heartbreaking things to watch somebody that I love not be able to get to do physically what you want to do. Like, mentally, do I think you could be 7 out there? Yes, I do. But with your body and the things you've put it through, it's not as easy as what we want it to be. But you told me, you said, never take for granted when you're going to run this last calf, because you don't know when that's going to be. And at the time I thought, yeah, okay, but with some things that have come up and some trials that we've encountered this year, I'm like, yeah, you don't ever know when it's going to be. You don't ever know when that last run on that horse is going to be. And it's, at this point now, I'm thankful that you said that, because now I'm trying to take every moment and soak it up and I get to run one on this horse today, or I get to rope at this rodeo today, because it's not a guarantee. for any of us.
No, it's not a guarantee, and time goes by faster than what you ever think it will. When you're 20 or 30 years old, you don't look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you that's just like me. Looking back, there was 3 or 4 years I thought I was kind of tired of it and didn't go. It wasn't that I didn't rope or to go anywhere. I'd go to the buildings in Cheyenne and stuff, and I didn't really want to do it that way. Looking back, I wish that I would have gone, because that's really, you know, what I wanted to do. And now that's some of the biggest regrets I have,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, I just felt like, I even think to myself, what was I doing? You know, just because I want it. And that's just like, I have people ask me every day, aren't you tired of driving Miss Daisy around? No, I love it. I love getting to watch what you do. Plus, I see people I haven't seen in 20 years all the time. Rodeo has changed from when I did it. I still think we got to do it at the best time.
Yeah, I agree.
The money isn't quite as good, and everything this day and time looks better on paper. But when I did it, today it costs 5 times more to do it than when I did it.
Right.
But there's a lot more money to be had, especially as a breakaway roper.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all have jackpots that pay a lot. You got the WCRA. You got, I don't even know what they call those invitational ropings that you just got through with at San Diego. And those things are great things that y'all have opportunity. It doesn't all depend on the PRCA, you know. And so there's a huge future in this for y'all. But it doesn't matter what the future is. If you don't love this and have the right mindset for it, you can practice all you want to practice. But if you don't have the mindset, and you're wasting your time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that you got to be Einstein to do this. To me, it's putting your full focus and attention into it in the practice pen, to where when you get the rodeo, you don't have to think. If you have to think at the rodeo, most time you have screwed yourself.
Yeah.
And but you know, it's just stuff that I've kind of learned through the years.
So I'm gonna finish up and ask you 2 questions. One, if you talk about, I wish I could go back and do it. If you could go back and tell 20-year-old Raymond, you know, a couple key things that changed the trajectory of your career, what would those things be?
The first thing I would do, I would tell myself to break this down. Every day when I practice, after, to see how things went, and not why is everything going wrong, but what can I do to make this better? Mm-hmm. And there's some days you might go out there and practice and it go terrible, some days great. And that's just going to be the way it goes. But if you can't analyze yourself and be honest with yourself, you're in trouble. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes lying to yourself about how good it's going, you're not going to improve. And what you got to remember, you're the one that's wanting to do better. So be honest with yourself. But the second thing I would tell myself was to set bigger goals. My goal was to make the NFR, but that goal wasn't high enough looking back, because I had the ability to do better or be a top 5 roper every year. And I know I had the ability at the time and the horses to be a world champion. But that does take extra work. And it wasn't that I wouldn't put in the work, because I roped on days that I didn't have to rope just because I like to rope. Still just like today. I rope here every day. I don't tie any down, but it drives me crazy if I don't get to rope. That's just what I like to do. But you need to do it more with a purpose. There was a lot of days I just went out there to practice because I knew Joe Blow was probably practicing and I needed to do it. And it wasn't that I didn't want to do it, but I didn't go out there enough with a purpose sometimes. And I did not set my goals high enough. And I think that you've got to, just like what we talked earlier about, being able to break it down to practice pen to where you know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. That way, when I drive out of this driveway, I'm not worried about the outcome. It might not go like I planned, but what good does it do me to worry all the way to the rodeo, because I'm creating a problem by doing that. I've seen me do it, I've seen you do it, I've seen everybody I've rodeoed with. It doesn't work that way. And we all want to think through this, or, you know, every sport you watch, they talk about do your job. That's pretty simple. If we know what our job is, doesn't mean we're going to win, but what you got to worry about, just like your job is to score, find the target, rope them as fast as you can. It's pretty simple. But you can't go there, remind yourself of that. You have to know that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
To where when you get there, you react.
What, looking forward to where you're at now and where you're headed, what's one thing that you want to see evolve in rodeo?
I want to see rodeo. I want to see the money. It's got a lot better through the years. I think the last year I went to the finals in '97, I think around paid $18,000 that year. Well, it came a long way from the first time when it paid $4,000. But we went to the first performance out there this year, and I don't know if I ought to tell this or not, but I'm going to. But we were sitting in the stands, and they said if you win all 10 rounds in the average, you were going to win $450,000. Well, I got to sitting there thinking for a minute, and I thought, you know, that's good if you win $450,000, but that's not much money. In this town, for all the people that are in this town, and when just about every other sport, there are 200 guys winning close to $1 million. You know, I still want to see rodeo get better. I think the rounds out there ought to pay $100,000 a night. You know, and these guys, they have perfected their craft so good, put so much time into this, worked at making this so professional, but we've still got to get the money better.
Yeah.
And even though I'm not a part of that, but we've got the American. You've got a chance for $1 million or $100,000, however you go in one day. That's great. Just like the other day, there's guys that are retired. They're going to come out and take a chance for $1 million. That I think that's great. They're doing that, you know. But I think that we've got to get the national finals more on that type of scale, and I think it can be, you know. And but I hope they finally get rewarded in the near future like what they should be. And so and I'd like to be able to see them get to do it at, you know, fewer rodeos.
Yeah.
It's a pretty grueling task out there to go to 80 to 100 every year. Just about every year you need a new horse after, you need a new truck, you know. It's the same thing. It hasn't changed since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's what I would like to see. I don't want it to go away. I think people they take such good care of their animals and everything anymore, and they've got so much money invested. I just want to see the money step up to where it matches what people have put into it.
Okay. What was your favorite memory inside of the arena when you rodeo?
I don't really know what my favorite one. I think my favorite one might have been the year I won Cheyenne. Mainly because that place is, which you know because you won it too, but it's so hard to win at. It's a crapshoot. You've got to have a calf that'll let you catch them, you know, wants to play, you know, and all of that stuff. But it's a hard place to win at. Another place that I love through the years, and I didn't ever win the $100,000 bonus, but I won the average at Calgary 3 different times. I always loved that place. That place is always packed full. You know, the Canadians were so good, you know, to us as Americans coming across there. I just thought it was a a really cool rodeo. Still to this day, me not competing, I get excited around those rodeos that have atmosphere to them. Mm-hmm. And I think y'all as a contestant do too. That's why sometimes for what y'all have done for the last 3 or 4 years, it's hard to go back to something less. The money might be okay, but it's kind of hard to get fired up sometimes when you've seen something different. And that's just like this time of year coming up, the buildings. I always love that time of year. They're tough, but just the atmosphere around those things, you know. If you want to rope and that doesn't bring out something in you, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You know, you need to quit. But I've enjoyed all of it. I've enjoyed your deal, you know, getting to go around and watch. Sometimes it's hard to keep your mouth shut, but you know, if you want to survive as a husband, sometimes
Episode
you have
2.0.
to. Yes.
We'll talk about that next week. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing this, and I'm excited about just you and I are going to work together on sharing some of these stories about the guys that you rodeoed with, because it's something that, just like all this stuff, I love hearing it. It makes an impact on me. It changes my perspective, and you know, why reinvent the wheel? You guys have had so much success, and so, you know, I think we can all benefit from it.
Well, I'm not good at stuff like this, but I am looking forward to this deal because there's some guys, even though they've got older, they've got some great information and they've got some really good stories. And, you know, if somebody out there can get one thing out of something, you know, somebody says, you know, it's helped you. But, you know, it's just because it's 2025, there were some guys wrote really good in the 70s, you know, for their, every year the times change. But, you know, I love to watch old films of those guys roping, you know. Yeah, it might not have been as fast, but there was a reason, you know. And so maybe somebody will get something good or some laughs or something out of it.
They'll get lots of all those things. So, well, thank you for coming to the show today. You guys can check out this podcast on YouTube if you want to watch it as well. And thank you for joining us in the loop, and we'll see you down the road.